Hello and good day to everybody from joining us from Singapore and from across the world. Welcome to our event, Future of Food Tech and Innovation, held in partnership with the Swiss Embassy here in Singapore. My name is Ziki Sim and I lead the community and brand team here at SGInnovate. I'm very honored to be opening today's event alongside His Excellency Fabrice Fillier, Ambassador of Switzerland to Singapore. At SGInnovate, we believe that deep tech has the potential to address some of the world's most pressing challenges. Our mission is to work with entrepreneurial scientists to help them build and scale their deep tech startups. And we do this by investing in startups, developing talent, and matching them with exciting deep tech startups. And actually, I'm very proud to share with you that we're actually having a virtual talent showcase where over 200 traineeships and job opportunities are available with some of these exciting startups in Singapore. So do join us on the 12th of September. We will post some details on the chat box below. We firmly believe in the power of community, and that's why we create events such as these, where we bring together players from across the deep tech innovation ecosystem to be able to share their stories of innovation. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today. It's always great to see where people are joining us from. We've learned that since COVID and moving all our events online, we do get participants from not just in Asia, but also in Europe. So do use the chat function and tell us where you are coming in from. Do also take this opportunity to connect with the other attendees here using the chat function below. And we do want this session to be interactive, so do post your questions on the Q&A box and the speakers will get to them. Today's topic on the future of food tech and innovation is very, very important. And we all know that around the world, the resources for agricultural production, such as soil, water, and biodiversity are under immense pressures. The increase in global population and climate change have raised concerns about worsening food shortages and also price increases. And as a small country with very limited agricultural output, Singapore currently imports 90% of our food from well over 170 countries. We've set ourselves a very ambitious goal to produce 30% of our own nutritional needs by the year 2030. That's not far off, and with such an aggressive target, there is an urgent need to bring innovation into the food and agriculture sector and work with players from across the ecosystem, from innovators, startups, corporates, researchers. Together, we can continue to discover, identify, and work on new food sources. Switzerland has done especially well in this area, and there's so much that we can learn from their experience. So in today's session, with such experts on the panel, I hope to be able to get new insights and consider how Singapore and Switzerland can collaborate further in the development and use of innovative, climate resilient, and sustainable technologies for agriculture and aquaculture. Thank you to our speakers today, and especially to our friends from the Swiss Embassy here in Singapore for this great partnership. I do want to do a special shout out to Lawrence Glass-Haler, Science Counselor at the Swiss Embassy, who works tirelessly with the team here at SGInnovate, connecting us with Swiss companies and experts, all adding to the robust discussions at our events here. So thank you, Lawrence, for that. Before we bring on the speakers, I would now like to invite the ambassador to please say a few words. Ambassador Fillier, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests and friends, it is a pleasure to welcome you to this event on future of food technology and innovation. Improving global food security, sustainability, and efficiency of food systems are key challenges for humanity, especially given the current pandemic. One of Singapore's major goals is to provide 30% of the nation's nutritional needs locally by 2030, and to become a leading agri-food and nutrition hub. There are significant opportunities for collaboration between our two countries, as Switzerland is a world reference in sustainable food and nutrition innovation. We look forward to more insights on how the ongoing and future partnerships between industry leaders, scientists and startups from both Switzerland and Singapore will lead to more innovative and sustainable ways to produce food for a growing population. On this note, I would like to welcome our distinguished panelists for this session. Mr. Fathi Derder, Managing Director, Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley, Dr. Roberto Reniero, Managing Director, Nestlé Research and Development Center in Singapore, Mr. Alex Ward, Head of Innovation APAC at Givaudan, Seck Kwang, Director of Food and Consumer Cluster at A-Star. Without further ado, I pass the floor to Mr. Fathi Derder, our moderator for this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and I'd wish to start with the special thanks to the Swiss Embassy, of course, and SGInnovate for organizing this event. It's a great pleasure for us. As you've been mentioning, the idea of this event will be to see how we can strengthen cooperation between leading hubs as Switzerland and Singapore. We'll have it with the companies you've been quoting a couple of seconds ago, of course, with Nestlé, Givaudan, and Derder, and Singapore representatives. But before that, allow me perhaps, and before this panel we'll have in more or less 20 minutes, in which we really want you to participate. Audience can submit questions on the Q&A you can see below the screen. Allow me to start by just maybe presenting what we are talking about when we are mentioning this Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley. Our objective, our aim really is to find answers to these, address issues to these main challenges we've been mentioning quite quickly. You all know them as well as me. We've got these carbon print challenges, of course, plastic waste, freshwater withdrawals, overnourished people, undernourished people, and all these challenges with a growing population. We must absolutely find solutions, and we are convinced in Switzerland that we need to strengthen cooperation between leading hubs to manage to find answers to these challenges. Switzerland, we created this Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley in this idea. First of all, to develop, strengthen and promote the Swiss food and nutrition ecosystem, attracting talents and cooperation and cooperating with other big and talented hubs like Singapore. Our key objectives, as you can imagine, is number one, to contribute to solving some of the most burning food-related topics, attract talents, help cooperation, and establish Switzerland as it is today already, but more even tomorrow as a world reference in sustainable food. Of course, this is a basis question. The baseline of all our topic is talking about sustainability and health for population when you're mentioning food. What are we talking about when we talk about Switzerland? Usually we aren't very modest in Switzerland, you know, but on this topic, we must admit that on the food area, we've got a unique ecosystem and an amazing density of world-leading companies in the food and nutrition area. We can mention, of course, the ones we were talking about today, and we will mention later. There's Nestlé, Givaudan, Derder, but we can also mention, of course, Firmenich, Syngenta, Lonza, for traceability, SGS or SICPA. And if we add to this very high level companies in universities, the Swiss Institute of Technology like ETH or EPFL in Lausanne and Zurich, or hospitality management schools like École Hôtelière in Lausanne, which is number one, we realize that we have a very high density of world-class leading key stakeholders in an area which is big as the Bay Area, maybe in San Francisco. And this is clearly an advantage, and we want to work on it. These guys are already cooperating a lot, as you will hear later on, for example, between Givaudan and Derder, but we want this cooperation to be stronger even, and with Swiss state also. A few Swiss food facts. Maybe you already know them all, but it's useful mentioning them again. We've got more than 4 billion Swiss francs invested every year in food and agri-tech R&D. We've got #1 in hospitality and management. I mentioned École Hôtelière, #1 according to rankings in global innovation in Switzerland, #1 in trading of coffee, sugar and cereals, more than 26,000 patents held by Swiss food tech companies. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are very important facts and figures. More than 26 R&D centers and 200 years of innovation in food, which is clearly an important part too. I've just mentioned two types of innovations. One of them with corporates. Excuse me, I just took one example, which is Nestlé. Since Nestlé has been launching a few days ago this vegan alternative to tuna, but in a couple of minutes, Roberto Reniero will talk more about Nestlé. We can also talk about packaging, which Nestlé is working on, or of course plant-based burgers. But we also have dozens of startups that are working precisely in the food and nutrition area, like with AI solutions to help farmers, like Gamaya does, precision farming with eco-robotics, or revitalizing muscles with Amazentis, which is launching its product in the United States despite COVID circumstances, or planted in Zurich, or other startups like Comba Group. I'm not going to quote them all and commend them all, but we've got many, many of them to develop our ecosystem in Switzerland. What are the advantages to be part of this? I'm not going to go through all of them. We offer international visibility to our members, a real-time overview on all the talents and startups. We have a permanent dialogue with political authorities. But what I want to focus on mainly for startups or talents coming from Singapore, if we can cooperate, is that we propose facilitated connections to all the network, to all the Swiss network, of course, to big companies we've been mentioning, but also to academics like the Swiss Institute of Technology, École Hôtelière, and of course, to facilitate efficient government services, which can be absolutely precious for startups. If you are interested in any of these aspects coming from anywhere in the world, this can be Singapore or somewhere else, we are at your disposal to help. Reminding in the conclusion that the common goal we all have is to address global food and nutrition issues by strengthening international partnerships. It's clear there is kind of competition between hubs, we know this, but it's a friendly competition to find answers to these challenges that we are all facing together, and the only solution will be to be cooperating all together. So this is it for the Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley. I hope I wasn't too long, and I will give the floor straight away to begin to Roberto Reniero. The floor is yours.
Okay, here we go. So let me put this in show. So again, sorry for that. So thank you very much for inviting me to this event. I would like to thank SGInnovate and of course the Swiss Embassy in Singapore. My name is Roberto Reniero. I'm the head of R&D Singapore. I have 25 years in the company, and I just wanted to take a few slides to talk about innovation and what is innovation for us. Nestlé has a long story of innovation. Everything started many years ago with something that was really a breakthrough. The invention by our founder of this farine lactate Nestlé. This was absolutely new. It was putting together a technology for production of milk powder and adding a flour, a cereal to give a complete meal. And then the innovation continued all along the years. And you can see since the beginning, we had products like the Julius Maggi sauce, the Milo. Milo is an iconic product here in Asia, Nescafé. All these came at the very beginning. And then this innovation journey continues today with new innovation that are kind of paving our history. Behind this innovation And this is where we can discuss later on how we can, interact. We have this Nestlé R&D organization. It's a very vast network of centers. We have one center, is the Nestlé Research Center that you see here, that is dedicated to cross-category centralized research in Lausanne, in Verchet-les-Blancs, where we have what you see here are the institute dedicated to food safety, health science, and material science. And recently, due to our commitment on plastic, and we have established also the Institute of Packaging Science. Then we have, what we call the category focused development, and it is done by category. So you see the different categories that we have. And then you see on the right side this regional innovation center for agility and for local relevance and agility. And this is where you see R&D Singapore. And I will talk a little bit about Singapore later on. Here is roughly the same picture, but you see, the how this is widespread all around the globe. And if you focus on Singapore, R&D Singapore, you see that is a quite special place because you have different categories. So we're responsible for a number of different categories, and we have also a regional responsibility. We call this a regional innovation center. I think any company always focus on, okay, how can we accelerate innovation? We have this bulk of knowledge, but how can we accelerate innovation? And you can see on this slide in 5 buckets what we do. The first bucket is about the early translation of science. We have this Nestlé Research Center in Switzerland. We have also a hub of this Nestlé Research Center here in Singapore. But we need to find a way to early translate this science into something tangible, into something that we can put via rapid prototyping and testing in front of a consumer or in front of our marketeers. That's another important tool that we have put in place. The importance of making immediately real, so that we can have a kind of conversation with our consumer, with our marketing colleagues. Of course, we have also tools to fast-track projects. And the other thing that we have just set up is this accelerator. There are new ways to accelerate and facilitate collaboration. And we call this an R&D the accelerator that we have in different centers, and we are establishing also in Singapore. And of course, we look at ways to have a low capital investment and to go speed to the market. So that's my last slide, and I think is the beginning of the conversation that we will have later on. We are here in Singapore since 40 years. So this R&D Singapore is the first center that was established in Asia by Nestlé. We have a long story of innovation, product processes, and packaging. We have some global responsibility. Milo, for example, coffee mixes, ice cream, that's quite new, came quite new recently. We have regional responsibility, but I was talking about the Regional Innovation Center, and our role here is beyond the category we develop. We have also, we must have a look at what's going around us. What are the trends? How the consumer is moving? How new things come into place, and then we can feed back to the rest of the organization to say, okay, this is what is going on. Now we could work on this. I talk about the Nestlé Research Singapore Hub that we have announced since 4 years, I think. And last but not least, the R&D Accelerator. And I will summarize this in a very simple way. An R&D Accelerator is from an idea to a shop test. It's not a launch in 6 months. And the idea can come from us, from anyone in the research and development, in the marketing, but from startups, from universities. And it's kind of having a tool where we can immediately and quickly test if something makes sense for the consumer. So this is kind of the hardware, and then of course this will open up to other discussion in the panel. Thank you very much. And I pass now to Alex Watt.
Okay, great. Thank you, Roberto. And a big thank you to SGInnovate and the Swiss Embassy for for the invitation. I would like to take in the next 5 minutes the opportunity to introduce Givaudan to you, to those of you who don't know us, and also our recent investment here in Singapore with our new innovation center for plant-based food. Givaudan, we touch billions of lives every day. Let me tell you a scenario. It may sound familiar. You wake up in the morning and you wash yourself. You brush your teeth, you put on your favorite perfume. You maybe eat a yogurt, drink a sachet of Nescafe 3-in-1 coffee. You wash the dishes, put the laundry on, grab a snack bar, and this is before you've left the house. There are between 8 and 10 interaction moments between a Givaudan product and yourself, just in that small morning routine. An average consumer, we feel, interacts with Givaudan product at least 10 times a day across the world. So we're bringing this world of scent and taste to life, and we take that responsibility very seriously. Givaudan recently launched its new purpose, which is very aspirational for all of us. You can read it there on the screen. And by doing good for the world around us and for the food industry, driving a strong sustainability agenda, we also aim to do well. We have just announced our ambition to become B Corp certified and have pledged to be climate positive by 2050. And we're very committed to the journey to get there. And our investment here in Singapore, our collaboration with Beulah here in Singapore, is part of that journey. And let me tell you a little bit more about why we are doing this. The food system is not biodiverse. We all read about this. There is 75% of the world's food comes from only 12 plants and 5 animals. A fun statistic about Switzerland I read recently, 70 billion kilos of beef consumed in 2019. If 1% can be switched to meat analog, it saves 20 million tons of CO2, which is equivalent to 2/3 of all the trees in Switzerland. So the plant industry is growing fast, and we're finding that everybody wants in, whether it's to disrupt or to defend. And the only way to get there is to imagine together, to collaborate with the consumer in mind. And that's what we're going to be doing. So our new innovation center is going to bring the latest thinking and experience in concept creation, new product development, flavor, culinary expertise, and extrusion experience. I like, Roberto, what you said about 6 months. This is bold, but I think with initiatives like this, it can be done for plant-based food. We're going to provide a facility for startups, for companies, and for researchers to turn their concepts into reality. So why did we choose Singapore for this investment? There is a strong talent pool here. We have our Givaudan Flavor Academy, where we train the latest flavorists to come into the industry, and all of the application technologists that we have around the region. That training is centralized here. So we have a strong pool of people that we train. We have our regional innovation team. This is a group of industry experts, of flavorists and chefs, of marketers and consumer sensory insights experts. We've heard a bit about the 30 by 30 initiative. Singapore is investing in its food future, and the plant-based ecosystem is getting a lot of attention from government, from VC, from industry, and from startups. We are lucky in Singapore that we have our APAC headquarters here. We are already well established. We have 3 sites, 2 factories, and in Woodlands we have the space to expand and build this innovation center for plant-based food. So there's no need for a new site. We have the means to do it. We have the space to do it. So the collaboration is with Beulah. We're going to have experts from both companies run this center. We're going to train more people from Singapore in the ways of extrusion and product development. And we are going to work with ingredient manufacturers, protein suppliers, CPGs, startups, and academia. And we're defining now the ways of working and the ambitions for how we'll run the center and the value that we expect to create. And we welcome you all to get in touch if that is something that fits with your plans. So let me just have a quick look and show you what the Innovation Center will look like, give you a bit of a sneak peek. This is the latest 3D design. In the center here, you'll see we have a big show kitchen for product development, for cooking. We have an area to host people from companies or startups. We have a big extruder room here with a full glass panel viewing facility. And we've made lots of space for storage of raw materials and over here storage of finished goods. So that on the right, you can see some of the mock-ups. And here I'd like to mention a collaboration with another Swiss company, which is Vizug, the Swiss leader in cooking and kitchen technology, and also with a big access to a network of chefs globally. So we're going to be working closely with them, and they all will be providing the, all of the cooking equipment into the kitchen. So to close, I'd like to say that we welcome food processing companies, startups, and researchers looking to develop novel plant-based foods. Givaudan's flavor, taste, ingredient, and product development expertise, combined with Beulah's equipment processing expertise, will provide a unique opportunity with a strong focus on wet and dry extrusion. Now with that, I would like to pass to Kwang to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. This is Kwang here, and just give me a minute to share my screen. Okay, a warm welcome to everybody around the world to this event, and much thanks to SGInnovate and the Swiss Embassy in Singapore for organizing this. My name is Kwang. I'm the Director for Industry Development for the Agency of Science and Technology Research in Singapore. My organization is a publicly funded research organization that looks at mission-oriented research to help build industries in Singapore and also to improve society in Singapore. We cover many technology areas and industry sectors, and in particular, food is something that we've really invested in over the years. I think in this talk, while I come from A*STAR, really I'm taking a Singapore-wide approach. The Singapore ecosystem is very diverse in terms of research and industry. But I think one thing that really is galvanizing the entire Singapore ecosystem together, as was mentioned earlier, is what we call Singapore's 30 by 30 goal. And really, it's what we call one of Singapore's big, hairy, audacious goals. What does this mean? We do aim to achieve production of 30% of Singapore's nutritional needs by 2030. And really, it's really a comeback. Currently, today, we import 90% of our food. Less than 2% of Singapore's land space is used for agriculture. So how do we achieve this goal to be able to produce this in 10 years' time? We have three focus strategies. One is really developing the urban agriculture and the smart agriculture area, focused on agricultural and smart agricultural technologies and systems that is relevant to an urban and dense population like Singapore. The other strategy is really to develop a smart aquaculture ecosystem. There are already companies in Singapore that do stacked farming for fish, land-based, but also sustainable farming in the sea. And the third thrust that we hope to do is also to build on the alternative protein and in using biotechnology to improve protein production through cell-based meat, microbial protein, as well as plant-based meats. What I would say is that I think that this has brought the entire ecosystem in Singapore towards a rallying point that includes government agencies, the regulators, industry, as well as public research agencies to be able to meet this goal. So just to give you a context on how Singapore plans for our food nutrition space, we've been doing this for about 10 years. And over the years, I think what we've coalesced around is three major themes. The first is efficacy. That's really where Singapore started from. And it's really the notion of, given that we're situated in Asia, how do we conduct research and understand how we can produce or understand foods that can impact health in the Asian phenotype. That's the first one. The second one is really safety. We all know that food is very important, but we all want safe, secure, and traceable food. So that's another big research theme that we focus on. And more recently, sustainability and security. We all know that the world population is growing, and we do need, as a world ecosystem, to be able to address how we can produce food in a sustainable way. And more recently, more on the Singapore context, how can we apply that technologies to provide food security for Singapore? Some of these areas and technology programs that we've developed, all the way from understanding how food and nutrition can impact mothers and the growth and development of children, how manipulating foods can improve metabolic syndromes that are prevalent in Singapore, like diabetes and obesity. How can we use biotechnology to create ingredients, flavors, fragrances, and even food ingredients in a more sustainable way, all the way to manufacturing and supply chain. Circular economy and sustainable packaging is also a very big area. And more recently, how can we apply technologies to improve the technology development for alternative proteins, urban agriculture, and aquaculture. We do all this at the national planning through constant foresighting, engaging of industry, and understanding what industry and Singapore's needs are to develop these programs. With these themes and the research areas, and these are themes that Singapore has put in place and funded across the entire research ecosystem. That includes an agency like myself from A*STAR, but also the universities, the National University of Singapore, the Nanyang Technological Universities, Temasek Life Sciences Ventures that focus on agri-tech and aquaculture, to even the polytechnics. But that forms the bedrock of how the public sector can support industry in food innovation. But we cannot do it alone. Our ultimate goal is really to create an interconnected and vibrant food innovation in Singapore. This will mean that we will need to work with the multinationals, and many of them are in Singapore today across many countries around the world. And I'm really heartened to say that we do have a wonderful Swiss representation in Singapore with the likes of Nestlé, Givaudan, Firmenich, and Bühler, and so on and so forth. Likewise, we do see that the Singapore enterprises, you do have the large local enterprises and the smaller SMEs. Singapore's a small market, and while their business model around Singapore works, many of them are also venturing to the region and the world. And that's really also complemented by what we see in the last few years, the proliferation of innovative startups in the food space. This is also important to create and support the startups. We are seeing many VCs and accelerators coming into Singapore. There's quite a lot of investment that has been growing in the food tech space. And likewise also, even local companies who local corporates, large corporates who are also creating accelerator programs to be able to work with local companies. So really our aim here is to strengthen and create the interconnectedness between the innovation ecosystem in Singapore to make it more vibrant. And already we see that multinationals are working with local companies and startups, public sector are working across, and this is something that we want to foster and grow more because we think this is really needed. And lastly, I think my last point is really Singapore is a small place. We can innovate all that we want, but our end goal is really how we can also impact the global food security and sustainability issues. we think it's really interesting because actually food is global and yet local. We hope that the technologies that we develop here can be exported or implemented in other regions. Food technologies, for example, needs to be adapted to local markets. So I think within Europe, US, and Asia, we do see a cross-fertilization of technologies and even product categories that can cut across. In Singapore, we are very focused in building international partnerships across the globe. We have linkages with Switzerland, with Europe, with Australia, New Zealand, with the US, and particularly for the linkages with Switzerland. I think this really builds on two countries that are, in a sense, quite similar, very like-minded in terms of the way we see ourselves around the world. And there's really an opportunity to connect, whether it's research organizations to research organizations, industry to industry, and these partnerships to connect both countries in a food innovation highway. We both have very strong commitments to advancing food tech. And really the bedrock of that is how do we cross-fertilize talent, science, and industry to make things grow. We already have many Swiss companies in Singapore, but I think the next phase also is that as Singapore local companies grow, Switzerland will also be a very interesting base for these companies to grow in Europe. So we have partner organizations like the Enterprise Singapore that really helps our local companies venture overseas, and there are significant efforts to see how we can help our local companies connect to international markets. So that's the end of my presentation. It's a very high overview, and I'll pass it over to Fathi.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kwang. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Roberto, for your presentation. Absolutely fascinating. And as you just mentioned, Kwang, we need to work together, and this is precisely the topic of our panel we are opening now. How can we strengthen cooperation between Singapore and Switzerland? Two similar countries, we agree, two small countries, but two world-class leaders in this major challenge world we're facing with major issues. Many topics we've got until maybe you've got 25 minutes to talk about it. Many questions coming from the audience. You can continue, and I'll be the spokesman of those questions. But maybe just to start, before going to the audience, a question to all the three of you, mentioning the way we can cooperate better between Switzerland and Singapore. What are maybe the specific topics that we could strengthen today, on which cooperation between both countries could focus? I don't know who wants to answer first to this question, but apart from what we are already doing, are there some topics on which we should be more focusing, or priorities? Maybe Kwang first, and then Alex, and then Roberto.
Thanks, Fathi. I really do think when we go into topics, I think a couple of themes come to my mind. One of them is this area of alternative proteins, and we all know that there's a huge trend. There's a lot of technologies, applications going into there. But I do feel that in this space, there is also a need for cross-sharing, because if you develop a plant-based proteins technology, you do need to localize it to the Asian palate, for example. And likewise, for local companies who want to enter into the European market, likewise, you need to create it at a format that makes it palatable to Europeans. So I think that's one big space that as the industry is growing, there's a lot of opportunity for cross-fertilization. The other one is urban agriculture. So the way I look at it is this, a lot of technologies are being put in place in terms of, for example, sensors, reducing energy intake, creating the lighting, maybe even modifying the genetic makeup of certain crops. But actually, if you think about urban agriculture and controlled environment agriculture, it's really interesting because the future is you can create the environment that you want in any location, right? You can create a temperate climate in Singapore, and likewise you can colder climate in Singapore, and you could also technically do that a warmer climate in Europe. And that's where, as we develop these technologies, there's Singapore will probably focus, or Asia will focus on crops that the Asians are interested to consume. But what we develop here could be exported to Europe because that could be an interesting market for them, and likewise across. So I do see a lot of cross-fertilization in these areas. The last one is a quick one. I think we do need to address the circular economy and this thing about the food industry also being faced by food waste, valorization, as well as the excessive use of plastics. And that's where I think internationally we do need to work together. The issues that Asia faces in plastic packaging is quite different from the West, and I think there are opportunities to work together in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwang. Do you share this point of view, Alex, on your side?
I do, and let me build on the point of cross-fertilization and how we are addressing exactly that. If we talk about sharing of expertise, specifically in this area of plant protein, the reason we have collaborated with Beulah is because that existing relationship is there at the very top between the two organizations, and to leverage that to Singapore was an easy thing to do. But we are going to have exactly the same facility in Switzerland that we have in Singapore. So if we want to digitally connect the two, and they will be fully enabled with cameras, we want to have people with glasses with cameras in, really showing from an operational point of view, how do you use the equipment? How do you form the product? How do you cook the product? And getting the best experts from both centers digitally connected and sharing that with our customers and the people, the startups that we're working with. That is one of the ways that we're going to really bring it to life.
And just before giving the word to Roberto, one question I see from the audience for you, for Givaudan, it's coming from Carolis Rosikas. Does Givaudan consider opportunities in cellular agriculture space or only in plant-based?
Oh no, absolutely we do, and we're talking with a number of players in cell-based area, especially in the seafood space. Okay. It's a different challenge. It's one that we don't know so much about. It's brand new. There are lots of questions still to answer. And the time when Givaudan would get involved in that type of product versus a plant-based extruded product is different. But absolutely, we are engaging with companies in that space.
Thanks for the precise answer. Roberto, on these global areas on which Singapore and Switzerland can cooperate?
Yeah. Well, look, I can only again echo and build on what I said, has been said by the other two panelists. I think one of the if you have seen, in my presentation, one of the reasons why we have this center in Singapore, one of the reasons is to have, agility and local relevance. I think there is a big subject around local origin and using, raw materials, ingredients, something that you can find here, and also you customize, because at the end of the day, you have to put in front to a consumer, and it has to be consumer relevant. So this is big, and this is something that we are doing. The other thing, definitely, we are already working. I've heard about this kind of pre-competitive, collaboration, and we are doing this, and we will continue to do this. So we are among the founders of the Circular Material Laboratory. We are collaborating with agents like A*STAR, for example. Our Institute of Science of Packaging is collaborating with A*STAR, and we will continue to do this. The other thing that we found quite relevant was also, you know, in terms of, I told about this hub that we have of the Nestlé Center, and this was put here in the spirit is to you work like in an open innovation environment and really tapping into local expertise, research partners, and so on, with collaboration with NUS, with collaboration with Nanyang universities, and so on. So there are a lot of things already happening, and many more to come. It's just a matter of sizing the opportunity and working together towards something.
And thank you very much, Roberto, for the answer. A question directly, I'll jump in, to Nestlé, coming from Xini, from our audience. Does Nestlé have any estimates on how large the plant-based market can get into the next 3-5 years, and how much in terms of investment is coming into this area?
No, look, yeah, well, we know it's a growing market. It's difficult to estimate, and we are, you know, we are looking at this as a global opportunity. So, and of course, it's as you can see also, you know, Givaudan and Buller, they're coming to Singapore to sizing the same opportunity. It's definitely an area of focus. It's definitely an area on we're working, and we will continue to work not only globally but also, you know, with the local ecosystem.
A very good question for you three, coming from the audience again, from Celeste, mentioning the fact that innovation used to be based on consumer insights, with the fickle mind of today's consumers. How will you cut short the research or insights process to quickly launch a product which may be in-out versus last many years, like all the times? In short, to make it short, what's your view on the short product life cycle versus cost of testing, research, and manufacturing? Who wants to answer first to Celeste? Maybe Roberto.
Well, I can if you want. I mean, look, first of all, again, I'm a big believer on having the right consumer insights, to understand the consumer, to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, to understand what you have really to put in front of the consumer. But sometimes we have also to test things, to test quickly things, and the idea of the R&D accelerator is part of this. So, I mean, at a certain point, you can have an idea that, as I said, can come from anyone, can come from startup, universities, market, our people in R&D center. And we want just kind of dip the toe. We want to see if it resonates. And of course, we craft around this idea, we craft the product. And to do this, of course, we work with consumers. We work with consumer experts. And then we put this into a shop. And then you have a dialogue. Then you can see what is the reaction. And based on that, you know, you can build a different story and then see how far this concept can go. So yes, we need to stay close to the consumer, but there are also ways to go fast and test. That's one of the idea we're exploring.
Alex, your point of view?
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. I think there are a lot of digital tools now that can enable consumer research and get feedback faster than the traditional ways of doing consumer research and product testing and so on. Measuring social media listening and getting real-time insights from big data can give you foresight around the trends and the categories and the types of products that are being bought and what people are, how they're eating them, how they're cooking them, based on what they post online. But I think from a digital sharing point of view, you can now connect the experts from around the world and have recipes where a product you know has been successful, is stable, is safe, tastes great from one part of the world, can be shared and scaled up in another part of the world in these innovation centers relatively quickly. And I think the time for product development has dramatically shortened. So I love the idea of concept to shop in 6 months. We have a similar plan within Givaudan to shorten around a similar timeline and get products through into the market faster, get feedback faster, and evolve them and tweak them as we go forward. So I think the overall time frame for product development is about to be revolutionized.
Kwang.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, that's a very important question for the public sector research organizations. we are not as close to the consumers as, you know, corporates and industry partners, but yet, you know, we are in this place that we are using public sector funds to invest in new capabilities that, you know, tend to be in the lower technology readiness level, you know, through research and productization. That said, we do need to build capabilities that are relevant to industry and ultimately to the consumer. So how do we do that? Before we start building any program, and also when programs are running, there's a very active review process and constant consultation with industry whether or not what we're developing is relevant. We do need to make hard decisions. If there's a certain research area or certain group that is not delivering, we will need to reprioritize and then channel that into research areas that grow. Again, constant discussions with industry partners. What do they see? We haven't gone so far to reaching out to the consumer, but that's it. We do work with our industry partners. And the other thing is, I think very importantly, you know, getting the synergies right between these programs and what we're building. So we do organize workshops, discussions on where industry is seeing trends, and then we take that into account as we develop programs and we build capabilities across. The public sector really wants to not just stay in the research space, but be able to translate our science and what we develop in partnerships with industry through collaborations or even spinning off companies. And I think it's fortunate to see in Singapore, I think we do see a rising trend in new companies coming up from the public sector research ecosystem. Thank you.
Maybe, and this is a hypothesis, maybe big companies and corporates are too slow. And this brings us to the question of the cooperation with startups. And the question came from the audience at 10:49 Swiss time by C. How big companies cooperate with small-scale startups like Givaudan and Nestlé, how the cooperation model can be. It's a question directly for Givaudan and Nestlé. How do you cooperate with startups? Who wants to begin? Alex first.
I can go first. It's something good, and we're building this new center. It's something that we are actively discussing at the moment, and the agreement that Buller and Givaudan have come up with is that we will assign 1 week per month for startups to use the facility. We've designed the area with a space to host startups, and we want to bring the latest thinking and new ideas into the center. And I think it's now time for the big companies to support startups, not to be threatened by them. They are moving quickly, and it keeps us on our toes, and it gives us access to the latest thinking. But I do think that it's important to give them a safe environment in which to share their ideas and in which to scale up their products, because often these companies put everything they have into their idea, and it's important that we provide a secure environment for them to share and to scale up.
Same point of view on Nestlé.
Yeah, look, I think again, yeah, you're right when you say, these two words may sometimes difficult to pull together, but it can work. It can work if there is a great opportunity that we can see. And the startups, sometimes they come with ideas, and then they need some help in how to make this into a real product, and then we can use our expertise, our food expertise, to translate this idea into a product. The other thing that we are doing, we can host startups, again in this model of the accelerator. We can give access and work in our pilot plant, so that together with our specialists, they can develop the idea. We can help in coaching. So there are many different models that we can set up. Clearly, speed is important, and one of the reasons I think sometimes it doesn't work is because we're not fast enough, and we have to be fast enough in order to meet the timeline of the startup. So it's a win-win if we gain speed in the way we decide and we move on.
We couldn't have this panel without mentioning, of course, the dramatic health situation we're living these days for months now. And we've got a question coming in from Dr. Dalal Al-Gawas saying many countries have been hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Economic output in Switzerland fell by 8%. In Singapore, the economy shrunk by 13%. How will these two countries use opportunities in food technology as a path to recovery? So I guess maybe you cannot answer in the name of Swiss state or Singapore state, but what are the ways out? We're not in an ideal situation for this. Who wants to start? Maybe Kwang.
Yeah, so I think fortunately for Singapore, we did manage to rely on our diversification of import strategies to keep food security and food supply in Singapore safe. Fortunately, we've not had major disruptions to food sources, but it's also made us think about two things. One is with regards to should something like this happen again, and should it be exacerbated even worse, are there things that we should put in place, whether it's reserve supplies, preservation technologies, as an ecosystem to prepare for that? I think that's one. The other one is actually more from a longer term perspective. I think COVID has really forced the entire, both countries and industries to relook at the resilience of the supply chain. If there are disruptions, how do you optimize it? How do you switch to alternative sources? Maybe some even stronger efforts in local sourcing. So that's something that we are also looking into from a research perspective, so that we can prepare ourselves further should something like this happen again.
And before, thank you very much, Kwang. Before giving the word to Roberto and Alex on this point, I'd add this other question of the audience from Scrivani. What are some of the conversations and innovations happening in the industry to address the lack of nutritional food for the poor in many parts of the world made more stark by the pandemic, but more specifically? Maybe on the first part, what are the paths used in this crisis? What is your answer in the industry, like Givaudan or Nestlé? Roberto first.
Well, again, it's of course, it's a pandemic. It's very unfortunate, but again, we should look this into, okay, what has happened and what are the opportunities and how we need to change eventually. So of course we see some trends. We see certain things happening, and everybody sees, e-commerce is, people stay at home, so e-commerce maybe is becoming bigger and bigger. So I think what we need to do, we need to look into this in a critical way and see, okay, how can we now, considering the new reality, how our products could be manufactured, could be designed in a way that can meet this new situation. It's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. And how can we look into what we are doing and change to meet the new reality? And we are doing this. We are doing this. Food, people, for example, they cook at home, they stay at home, e-commerce. So what are the opportunities that we can bring to the table? And I can add immediately on the second one. We have also, in our company, a big problem on affordability. So of course we look into this in a critical way. How can we bring nutritious products? Affordability is not about cheap; it's about nutritious product to part of the population in the world where they cannot afford certain type of food. And this is a full program that we have set up that can address this part, this specific part for either coming from the pandemic or also for part of the world where there is a need.
Thank you, Roberto. Alex.
So we're studying this topic as well, and a lot of the recent acquisitions that Givaudan have made are in the natural space, in the functional, botanical, natural ingredient space, a lot of which have functionality. So being very careful not to be seen as opportunistic for this COVID situation, but we have been studying the materials that we have and looking at ways that we can use them to bring additional value to concepts and additional value to customers by adding immunity benefits to a product, or antioxidant benefits to a product, or making the product more natural, more transparent, more clean label, as a way of making people more comforted and informed about the food choices that they make. And that's an ongoing program. To the second point, we are also studying the micronutrient needs in all of the developing markets as a way to seeing how the areas where Givaudan can influence and bring our purpose to life, where we can really tangibly make a difference. Nestlé have products in India, I know, fortified with micronutrients that really do address some of these needs. And it's an area that I think it's important for companies in the ingredient space, but also those with a big manufacturing footprint and distribution network, maybe to collaborate and bring even more nutritious products to consumers in those markets that have been most hit by the COVID situation.
Thank you very much, Alex. We're soon coming to the end of this panel, in maybe still 3-4 minutes. I'll just have a round table on how we can improve our cooperation between Switzerland and Singapore. And if we imagine 40 more years of Nestlé in Singapore, but before this concluding words, just one question coming from Zurich for you, Kwang, from ETHZ in Zurich. One quick question regarding the 30 by 30 initiative in Singapore. Triple the food produced is an exciting challenge, I think. However, plants still need arable land, which is very limited in Singapore. What is your view on single cell-based production systems such as microalgae, bacteria, or yeast?
Thanks for that question. I visited ETH Zurich in third quarter last year, as well as EPFL. So hello to you. Yes, when we look at alternative proteins, plant-based, microbial, and cell-based, we do know that Singapore's limitation. I mean, we don't have the agricultural resources for the raw materials for plant-based. So our strategy is a little bit different in that space. Between microbial and cell-based, I think the technologies and I suppose the consumer acceptance and the regulations for microbial-based proteins has a longer history. We are investing in it, and we do think that's a viable alternative source. Likewise for cell-based meat, I think our view is that there will be a market for each one. Each has its differentiator and complementary. So we are too investing in cell-based meats, both research areas within the public institutions, as well as supporting local and international startups who are investing in this space in R&D and potentially, if they're looking for a production site in Asia, we do think that Singapore, could be an interesting choice. So we are very enthusiastic. We are investing in this, and we do hope that it does take off.
Thank you very much for the precise answer. So maybe a wrap up for some concluding words. Roberto, maybe we can start with you, with Nestlé. It's not 4 more years, but 40 more years between.
Even more, even more for sure. No, I think honestly, Asia is an unbelievable part of the world. I've been now in Asia for 5 years. Before I was in China, and when you come here, you see the span of opportunities that you have, and so many things that you can do. Definitely, I mean, our presence here is clear and continue, and we have already established all along these years a lot of connection with what we call the local ecosystem, and we will continue to build, because at the end of the day, it's about bringing the right food, the right nutritious food to our consumer. We say that our mission is to unlock the power of food to enhance the quality of life of everyone today in the future, and we will continue to do this locally and globally. And it is absolutely necessary when we do this in Singapore that we do with our, infrastructure, R&D infrastructure, but also profiting of all the other things that we have around us. And there are plenty of opportunities to size.
Thanks, Roberto. Alex?
I'd just like to close by saying I think now really is the best time we've had for collaboration. There are real challenges that for the first time ever, I think truly affect everybody. And the time is for us to come together with all of the digital tools that we have. As you can see today, it's possible. Communication is easier than it ever has been before. And we need to make the most of that. From our perspective, the focus now is on execution. We have made some bold plans. We've made some big investments. And we want to make sure that we really turn that into value, not only for our customers and the startups, but for the food ecosystem as a whole, to help Singapore hit its 30 by 30 target and to provide a safe and innovative place for companies across Asia to develop the next plant-based foods for Asia, with Asian culinary culture in mind, and for the Asian formats. So, thank you.
Thanks to all you three for participating. As we see, cooperation is absolutely necessary. Swiss companies in Singapore, and all Singapore's talents want to come to Switzerland are most welcome. As you know, Swiss Food and the Nutrition Valley is there. We've got R&D centers, Givaudan, Derder, Nestlé, and all the other companies in Switzerland. Kwang, you were in Switzerland, you said last year. Maybe you'll be back soon.
Oh, definitely. We were supposed to go back until COVID hit. We were supposed to visit ET at Zurich and APFL to follow on discussion, but unfortunately we couldn't. So we definitely will be back.
You'll be most welcome as soon as we can, and we hope that the sooner the better. Thank you very much, all of you, and thanks to the audience for the many precise and interesting questions. And I don't know, I give the floor to Mr. Ambassador or Seck for the concluding words, Mr. Ambassador.
But thank you very much. I think this webinar was very, very interesting, and offered some great insights on the potential of the cooperation between our two countries in food tech. So I would just like to thank you all again on behalf of the Swiss Embassy for your presentations, for the lively discussion. And I really hope it's just the first webinar of a series where we will be able to get together and to foster cooperation in this very important field. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ambassador. On behalf of SGInnovate, I would like to give special mention to all of our panelists, Roberto, Alex, Kwang, and Fathi, for their informative presentations, as well as the panel discussion on the future of technology and innovation, as well as sharing more about collaborations between Singapore and Switzerland. We'd also like to thank our event partner, the Embassy of Switzerland in Singapore, for making this event possible. We'd also like to thank all of our attendees for tuning in today. And while we were not able to answer all of the questions submitted due to time constraints, we hope that we have managed to cover most of the insights and shed more about the up and coming in the food tech space. Please also keep a lookout for our post-event EDM, which will actually include a recording of this event on our YouTube page, as well as the links to the presentations shared by our speakers today. Please feel free to write into us at events@SGInnovate if you have any questions. And we also appreciate if you could share your feedback on this webinar after it is over. We hope that you are able to join us for the rest of our events in the future, and please have a great evening or morning ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.